要说川普在外交手腕上目前最大的失误，恐怕就是说的太多，反而给了对手提前准备的时间。当初他在重返白宫之前，就公开宣示关税政策一定会坚持到底，甚至还特别交代不会选在愚人节4月1日上路，反而选在4月2日实施。结果4月2日那天，对等关税正式生效，成了历史的一部分。本以为这是川普对中国下的一步好棋，没想到中国反应迅速，4月4日毫无预警地宣布停止向任何国家出口稀土磁铁，完全没有提前通知，也没有给外界任何囤货的缓冲时间，就连周转的可能性也都彻底断绝。
You need rare earths to make a number of crucial products like semiconductors, electric vehicle motors, fighter jets, and missiles, wind turbines, and even your LED lights. Basically, these are metals of the future. And where does China come in? Well, China dominates rare earth production. China makes up 70% of all rare earth output. They also make up 90% of rare earth magnets. These are magnets made from rare earth metals. They're key to making EVs. This near monopoly is worrying for other countries. China's latest ban has spooked the White House. The US is rightly worried because rare earths go into almost everything, even their flagship F-35 fighter jets. Normally, such crucial inputs would be stocked. But reports say most American companies do not have stocks because rare earths are quite costly. If you stock them, a lot of your cash would be tied up.
We know that the auto manufacturers and the defense manufacturers they came crying to the U.S. government before the Geneva talks and said that these things are starting to impose pain and starting to impose work stoppages. And that's something that it's a gray rhino. I mean, the U.S. national security establishment has known about this dependency on China for rare earth processing for years, but they haven't come up with a solution at scale. But I think what was interesting over the last month is that China has broken the glass on actually using this coercive instrument. It's actually now ratcheting up pressure. Xi Jinping has an appetite for leverage, and now that he knows he has this leverage over the U.S., you're going to see him pushing again and again to kind of recycle this leverage and try to extract more concessions from the U.S. But rather than bending over and giving China more concessions over the last couple of weeks, you've seen them doubling down with this empowered Commerce Department strengthening and broadening the export controls.
In April, China suspended the export of critical rare earth elements, metals, and magnets in response to US President Donald Trump's tariff war against Beijing. The move has crippled the supply chain for the electronics to automobiles and even aerospace. China now requires importers to submit an application detailing the end use of these rare earth magnets, with assurance that the materials won't be used in military applications or be routed to the US. The process must be initiated by the importer, then endorsed by China before a final clearance.
How badly is the restriction by China on supply of rare earth magnets impacting TVS Motor Company right now in terms of production?
I think in the short term it will impact the entire industry a fair bit. As we go forward, we have to develop new solutions, develop new components, new suppliers, and really work our way through this.
So is it already, for the industry, is it already showing on the monthly numbers?
I think it will start showing soon. Maybe in June, if not definitely in July.
No, some bodies have really sounded the alarm bells, saying that this could literally bring EV production to a grinding halt. Would you go to the extent of saying that
it is concerning? Yes, Parikshit, it is concerning.
It could bring it to a halt?
Yes.
根据《纽约时报》报道，美方原本预期中国将放宽对稀土磁铁的出口限制，成为5月中旬达成贸易休战协议的一部分。但到了5月30日，川普总统却公开暗示，中国仍在限制稀土磁铁的出口准入。这项指控不一定完全属实，因为在同一篇报道中也提到，中国商务部其实正试图透过发放出口许可释出善意。早在4月中旬，中国就曾向部分欧洲企业发放少量许可证，并在5月最后一周也对部分美国公司开放了有限的出口。然而，整体供应却仍在快速缩减当中。中国欧盟商会主席严斯就坦言， 供应链仍面临严重中断。这场僵局使得川普迫切需要与习近平直接对话。
The future of trade talks between the U.S. and China now look more uncertain than ever, as both countries accuse each other of violating an agreement that was supposed to help bring an end to the trade war.
What was thought to be a breakthrough in U.S.-China trade relations in Geneva 3 weeks ago has all but diminished.
They're just slow-rolling the deal.
After the White House accused China of not following through on a key part of the Geneva Agreement, lowering its non-tariff barriers to unlock rare earth mineral exports, China now accuses the Trump administration of imposing discriminatory restrictive measures against China, including export restrictions on AI chips and taking away visas from Chinese students.
So by exerting this extra scrutiny on Chinese visas, that is going to deliver a significant setback to China's long-term industrial plans.
China's Ministry of Commerce says the United States has unilaterally provoked new economic and trade frictions, exacerbating the uncertainty and instability of bilateral economic and trade relations.
I can confirm that the two leaders will likely talk this week.
Members of the president's economic team say they believe a conversation between Trump and Xi is what's needed to get talks back on track. The standoff has implications far beyond tariffs. China says if the U.S. continues on this path, they will take resolute and forceful measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests.
I think it was CNBC's Eunice Yoon I caught during New York hours today reporting from Beijing saying that Chinese were sort of cool to the idea of a call. I don't think they will agree to a call unless the outcome is predetermined and they're getting something pretty substantial. So the Geneva meeting was spun as China sort of getting more than the U.S. or getting more than it gave, which was true over that weekend. But if you look at over the course of the year, the U.S. has instituted new, 30% baseline tariffs, higher in some cases, on China. And if China were to remove all its measures in response, the U.S. would have sort of gotten that tariff raise for free. So I think the idea that China's just going to agree to release these rare earths, say, we made a misunderstanding at Geneva, here you go. That's not going to happen. The U.S. knows this, and I believe the strategy with a series of events, a series of actions on the U.S. side to tighten export controls of, semiconductor testing equipment, aircraft parts, and the like that China is dependent on the U.S. for. I think the U.S. is trying to create bargaining chips that they can trade for rare earths. So some of the more recent export control measures from the U.S. side could be unwound in response for China, releasing these rare earth minerals. I think that's the play the U.S. is trying to make. I'm not sure China is going to go for it. China spent decades, perhaps, sort of developing this, what seems to be a very effective trade weapon with these rare earth minerals. It's now been taken out of the hangar. I think it's sort of a use it or lose it now because, the rest of the world now knows that this is something that China will use when the time comes and is going to rush to try to rectify that situation. So China's got a finite window of effectiveness of this weapon, and I don't think they're going to reholster it lightly. So I'm not sure China will release the rare earths without getting a rollback in tariffs, and I'm not sure the U.S. can do that without really derailing the entire Trump trade policy. So it's a tricky spot.
其实自2010年，中国因领土争端对日本实施为期2个月的稀土禁运，引发全球对其主导地位的警觉以来，美国历届政府都曾试图重启本土的稀土产业，但现实非常残酷的是，稀土的生产牵涉到采矿、提炼、加工、合成等一整套高污染、高资本产业链，几乎每一个环节都需要庞大投资，却换来微薄利润。因此，尽管将供应链带回美国在战略上看似重要，但从财务与执行层面来看，这笔账真的划算吗？恐怕正是现在川普政府心中最大的问号。
As the world tries to become less dependent on fossil fuels, magnets and the multi-billion-dollar industry behind them are the key to many clean energy technologies, including some crazy futuristic ones.
This is the fundamental building block of our fusion technology.
But there's a big problem with our VIMs, very important magnets, that could derail the whole project of slowing climate change.
The supply chain of those is a challenge. About 90% of that material is processed in China. And so the concern is that if there's not enough magnets to go around, there'll be a restriction in supply.
Which country control the magnetism, control the world?
We're the only company in the world, and that includes Chinese industry, that has the expertise from the resource all the way through to the magnet. We could have all the rare earths in the world, but if you can't refine them and turn them into magnets, you don't have a solution for the issue.
So, Jim, do you have that solution right now? Because we spoke with Joe a little earlier this year, and he reminded us that it kind of doesn't matter if you can extract it here in the US, you got to be able to refine it. And in some cases, with some of these elements, 90% of that is happening in China. What exactly can you do on the refining level here in the US?
There are two places in the world that you can refine at scale. The Chinese sphere of influence, predominantly China, a little bit Malaysia, and then in California, in Mountain Pass, California, which is our site. We actually, I think some people would be surprised by this, but we refine today more than half of the concentrate that we produce. So we are refining at scale as we speak and expanding that rapidly. So we have brought this capability back to the United States of America, and we're the second largest producer of rare earth materials in the world today.
The kind of magnets Carline makes are called permanent magnets. That is, metals that are magnetic on their own, as opposed to electromagnets, which only become magnetic when electric current flows around them. Permanent magnets are a big business. In 2023, about $38 billion worth of these metals were produced globally. And they're particularly important for clean energy technologies like electric vehicles and wind turbines. Without magnets, these things simply wouldn't work.
Most permanent magnets today used in wind turbines or electric car motors come from using rare earth metals, typically neodymium.
Rare earths are metals that are only found in the Earth's crust in trace amounts, a few parts per million. And 92% of the world's rare earth magnets come from one place, China.
So it's not like rare earth metals, or neodymium specifically, is only found in China. It's that China has built over years, through government investment and private investment, a whole supply chain all the way from mining to the final product in the cheapest way possible. And that's made it really difficult for any other country to get into the neodymium game.
但无论美国是否愿意全盘接手这条吃力不讨好的产业链，眼下川普政府都必须面对一个更加迫切的问题，那就是如何打破与中国的僵局。因为中国或许能忍受晶片发展的慢一点，科技突破晚一点，可是当稀土磁铁原料短缺开始波及美国的汽车、风电、飞机、军工乃至医疗设备产线时，一场因缺料导致的工业停摆将是无法估量的损失，